Anna wiped the last smudge off the agency's gleaming glass door as the evening light faded behind her. The modeling agency was housed in a sleek downtown building, where polished heels clicked on marble floors and the air always smelled faintly of designer perfume. Tonight, though, it was quieter, the frantic rush of auditions and fittings done for the day. Anna, dressed simply in her worn jacket and jeans, stood out against the backdrop of silk scarves and glossy magazines that decorated the agency's lobby. She had worked here for nearly 2 years now, their trusted cleaner, known by name but not truly noticed. To Anna, the job was honest work, long hours that paid rent and kept her family afloat. She wasn't interested in glamorous illusions or perfect appearances. Her face carried the story of a childhood injury, a scar tracing along her cheek, faded but unmistakable. She often caught passing glances, some curious, many dismissive, in moments too brief to confront. Inside the same bright office, Lucia paced between desks. She was the casting director here, sharp-eyed and impeccably dressed, with a reputation for demanding flawlessness. Perfection was her currency, and she controlled the agency's image with an iron fist wrapped in silk. An imperious smile curled her lips as she noticed Anna moving in the shadows, gathering cleaning supplies. Her eyes flicked disdainfully to the scar on Anna's face, so out of place amid the flawless complexions that paraded through the agency's halls daily. Without thinking twice, Lucia's voice dropped to a mocking whisper loud enough for a nearby assistant to hear. "Do you really think someone like her belongs here?" The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. Anna paused, a knot tightening in her stomach. Others had looked, but those words felt different, personal and cutting. The air thickened. The night was far from over. The morning light streamed through the agency's tall windows, illuminating rows of sleek chairs and spotless floors. Anna was in the middle of her routine, carefully sweeping under the fabric samples laid out on a nearby table when a sharp voice sliced through the calm. "Is that the cleaner?" Lucia's voice carried across the room like a whip crack, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. Why is she even here during a casting day? This isn't a janitorial closet, it's a place of beauty. Anna froze mid-sweep, the broom still poised in the air. Her heart hammered against her ribs, her mind scrambling to will her face into calm neutrality. She wished she could disappear beneath the polished floorboards. Lucia, with a glint of malicious delight, stepped closer, her eyes drilling into Anna's scarred cheek like it was a target painted for humiliation. The people in the room, stylists, photographers, hopeful models, stared, their whispers growing louder, like a rising tide. "One has to wonder," Lucia continued, her tone dripping with disdain, "what kind of example it sets to have someone with imperfection lurking among us. It's a modeling agency, not a shelter for those too damaged to make it out there." Anna's cheeks flushed crimson, a wave of shame washing over her. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, as glances and snickers rippled out from the crowd. There was a sudden silence, a collective holding of breath, as she lowered the broom with trembling hands. "Maybe she doesn't understand the standards here," Lucia sneered, crossing her arms imperiously. "Someone like her could never represent this agency's clients. Look at that scar, it's distracting." A few of the assistants nearby shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some exchanging uncertain glances, but no one dared challenge Lucia. Her authority was absolute, and those beneath her knew better than to cross the casting director. Anna's throat felt dry, her voice caught somewhere between a whisper and a sob. "I'm just here to clean," she murmured, lowering her gaze to the floor. Lucia smirked, stepping in front of Anna, blocking the pathway toward the door. "No, you're a problem here. You distract the clients. You don't belong in this space. If you can't step aside, I'll have security escort you out." A flicker of desperation crossed Anna's features. "Please, I haven't done anything wrong," she said quietly. Lucia laughed coldly. "Wrong? You show up in front of our clients looking like that? Everything about you screams that you don't understand the business." Whispers erupted around the room, some cruel, others hesitant but unavoidable. A young model snickered, covering her mouth as she glanced at Anna's scar, while a makeup artist gave a sympathetic look that Anna barely noticed. The atmosphere thickened, a tense mix of humiliation and powerlessness. Anna attempted to sidestep Lucia's blockade, her heart aching as the gazes of the agency's elite weighed down upon her. But Lucia planted her feet squarely in front of the door. "You're not going anywhere," she said firmly, eyes blazing. "If you can't respect the image we protect, then you're not welcome." Anna struggled to hold back tears, breathing unevenly as the room's hostility pressed inward, suffocating in its intensity. Her hands trembled as she clutched the mop handle, its worn wood rough beneath her trembling grip. Just then, Carlos, a junior member of the staff, cleared his throat nervously. "I think Anna's just doing her job," he said softly, casting a cautious look at Lucia. Lucia turned sharply toward Carlos, her gaze icy. "And who asked for your opinion?" she snapped. "This is a business, not a charity." The room shifted uneasily, the staff caught between loyalty and fear. Anna felt like a specimen under a microscope, dissected by cruel eyes that saw only flaw and failure. Desperation prickled beneath her skin. She could leave, walk out of the doors, retreat into the anonymity of the city outside, but the humiliation gnawed at her. It was the public nature of the insult that cut deepest, the sense of invisibility made visible. Lucia's voice broke through the tension again. "I'll make sure security comes if you don't move along," she warned, voice icy but loud enough for clients passing in the corridor to hear. Anna swallowed hard, fear and anger merging in a bitter knot. She wished someone would step forward, anyone, to stand with her. But the room remained still, the silence oppressive. Her gaze flickered toward the agency's large windows where the sun poured light in streams. What had once been a hopeful place for ambition and creativity had become a suffocating cage. With a final, shaky breath, Anna turned back to her cart of cleaning supplies, shoving past Lucia with quiet dignity. But the sharp smirk on Lucia's face stayed with her, a persistent shadow. The murmurs and stares followed Anna as she pushed her cart through the hallways, slipping past models in rehearsed poses and assistants clutching contracts. Each glance felt like a tiny wound, reopening old insecurities she had long tried to bury. Outside the agency, on the thrumming city street, Anna paused. The cool air brushed against her face, but the scar felt heavier in the daylight. She pulled her jacket tighter, fumbled with her phone, and dialed a number she knew by heart. "Emma," she said quietly when the call connected. "It's Anna. Something happened at work today. I don't know what to do." Emma's soothing voice came through instantly. "Tell me everything." Anna recounted the morning's events, her voice trembling behind each word. Emma listened, her tone firm but kind. "That's awful, Anna. No one should be treated like that," Emma said. "You're stronger than they think." Anna tried to swallow the lump in her throat. "But I don't want to make a fuss. I just want to do my job and be left alone." Emma's voice softened. "You deserve more than just being left alone. You deserve respect." Their conversation ended with promises to meet later, but Anna was left alone with her swirling thoughts. The injustice clung to her like a second skin, heavy and unyielding. The afternoon shadows deepened as she returned inside, determined to finish her shift. But the agency no longer felt neutral. Every whispered comment, every sideways glance seemed amplified. As the day dragged on, an increasing unease settled over Anna. It seemed impossible to escape the spotlight Lucia had thrown on her, the harsh judgment that refused to fade quietly. By late afternoon, the tension reached a breaking point. Lucia called an abrupt meeting with the agency's team, her voice sharp and commanding. "We have a last-minute issue," she announced, scanning the room. "One of the contracted models canceled suddenly. We need a replacement. Preferably someone who meets our standards." Eyes turned toward Anna, who stood near the doorway with her cleaning cart, heart pounding erratically. Lucia smirked cruelly. "Anna, why don't you try posing for us? Let's see if you can handle the spotlight." The room fell silent, and all eyes fixed on Anna. The air thickened with anticipation and disbelief. Anna's breath caught in her throat as the impossible choice was laid bare before her. Her shoulders tightened, muscles tense. To refuse meant further humiliation, to accept was a leap into unknown territory. Lucia's gaze was steady, unwavering, as if daring Anna to prove her worth. The moment stretched, suspended in the discord of judgment and hope. "What would you have done?" The room was silent except for the low hum of the city beyond the agency's walls. Anna stood frozen, heart hammering, as countless eyes fixed on her like spotlights highlighting every flicker of doubt across her face. The tension was nearly unbearable, but beneath the weight of judgment, something inside her stirred, a quiet defiance, a spark she hadn't felt in years. Lucia's smirk widened. "Come on, Anna. Don't be shy. We haven't got all day." Anna swallowed her fear and, with trembling legs, stepped aside from her cleaning cart and into the open floor space where the agency's newest models usually posed with effortless grace. A bright spotlight followed her movements, illuminating her scarred cheek in stark contrast to the flawless faces around her. Her first instinct was to shrink back, to cover the mark that had been the source of so much ridicule. But then she recalled the voice of Emma over the phone, the reminder of her strength and dignity, the years she had spent navigating hardships with quiet resilience. Taking a deep breath, Anna lifted her chin and looked toward the photographers and casting directors who were watching her closely, waiting to see if she would falter. Lucia's eyes gleamed with anticipation, clearly expecting a stumble. Anna raised her arms hesitantly, trying to mimic the poses she had seen flown around in the glossy magazines scattered throughout the office, arms lifted gracefully here, a tilt of the head there. At first, her movements were stiff, almost clumsy, but as a rhythm began to pulse through her, something shifted. She remembered how, during her teenage years, she had posed for local artists. The way light played against contours, the way a gentle expression could tell a story, that memory came bubbling to the surface. With a subtle adjustment to her posture, Anna's shoulders relaxed, and her hands found purposeful placements. She allowed a hint of a genuine smile to play at the corners of her lips, not forced, but real, and felt a quiet confidence bloom within her. The cameras clicked, flashing, as photographers leaned forward, poring over each angle. Anna transitioned into newer poses, experimenting with emotion and presence in a way that surprised even herself. Some in the room muttered in disbelief. "Remarkable," whispered a stylist seated near a client. The inner circle of casting agents exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Lucia's facade faltered slightly, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. Yet she stayed poised, biting back a comment. Anna's scar, once a source of shame, now caught the light in a way that added character and depth to her face. The irregular line traced a story of survival and quiet courage, qualities that these frozen images captured with startling clarity. Clients, some who had initially turned away upon meeting Anna, sat forward eagerly, exchanging quiet remarks about the authenticity she brought to the shoot. One client leaned over to a colleague, voice hushed but intense. "She's real. Not just another cookie-cutter model." Anna felt warmth spread through her chest. The room's weight shifted as admiration edged out derision. Her movements grew bolder, more fluid, more natural. "What's going on here?" murmured Manuel, a senior photographer with a reputation for cutting criticism, his brow furrowed but eyes gleaming with respect. Anna was no longer just the cleaner with a scar. She was commanding the room, compelling even the harshest skeptics to reconsider. Lucia's lips pressed into a tight line. She abruptly stood and braced her hands against a nearby table. "All right, that's enough," she said briskly, attempting to regain control. "Let's not get carried away." But the momentum had already shifted. The photographers raised their cameras for more shots, encouraged by the genuine presence Anna projected. The agency's assistant manager, Sophia, whispered softly to Lucia, "Maybe we underestimated her." Lucia shot her a glare before stepping back, letting the session continue begrudgingly. Throughout the shoot, Anna maintained her focus, channeling years of hidden ambition and latent poise into every frame. When the shoot finally wrapped, a silence lingered as the photographs were reviewed on nearby monitors. The image that flashed on the screen was Anna, standing tall with her scar catching soft shadows, eyes filled with quiet strength and a natural smile that lit the room. It was not the typical polished, airbrushed look the agency was known for, but it was compelling, real. Suddenly, murmurs of excitement blossomed across the room. "Her look tells a story. People will relate to that," Sophia said earnestly. Clients exchanged positive nods, their conversations now alive with enthusiasm about Anna's unique presence. "Finally, someone original," a client said, voice full of approval. Lucia retreated to a corner, arms folded tightly, her jaw clenched. Though she refused to voice it aloud, uncertainty gnawed at her. The agency's strict doctrines of perfection had been challenged, and, perhaps unwittingly, broken. Anna's cheeks flushed, not from embarrassment but from the thrill of having defied expectation and reclaimed a measure of self-respect in the very heart of a place that had sought to diminish her. "Thank you," Anna said quietly, eyes sweeping the room. "I didn't expect this." Sophia smiled warmly. "Come on. You belong here. You just had to show them." Lucia's voice cut through the warmth like a sharp blade, though her tone lacked its usual cruelty. "Don't let this get to your head. This is an exception, not a rule." Anna met Lucia's gaze steadily. "Maybe it's time the rules change. Maybe perfection isn't just skin deep." Across from them, Carlos shook his head in amazement, his expression one of respect. Anna's transformation that day rippled quickly throughout the agency and beyond. Within hours, photos of her candid, natural poses circulated on social media, igniting a fervent response. Comments praised her courage and authenticity, celebrating the beauty found in imperfections. "Finally, a model who looks like real people," one viewer wrote. "Her scar makes her unique, not less," another added. The wave of support reached even the most conservative corners of the agency, forcing decision-makers to reconsider their rigid standards. Outside, Anna's phone buzzed with messages from Emma and others who had seen her photographs. Words of pride and encouragement poured in, bolstering her already swelling confidence. For the first time in a long while, Anna allowed herself to imagine a future beyond the mop and cleaning supplies, one where her story, her scar, and her strength were not liabilities but assets. That evening, as she walked home beneath the city lights, Anna felt a quiet joy blossoming in her chest. She had stood up, in a way that mattered, and the world had taken notice. At the same time, behind the agency's glass doors, Lucia sat alone in her office, her usual smirk replaced by a contemplative frown. The rigid standards she had championed now seemed brittle and outdated. Her fingers drummed nervously on her desk. The clash between old ideals and new realities unsettled her more than she cared to admit. The tension between Anna and Lucia had shifted from a battle of exclusion to one of reluctant acceptance. Several staff members took subtle steps toward advocating for greater inclusion, emboldened by Anna's quiet triumph. The day had concluded not with a decisive victory for either side, but with an opening, a crack in the agency's polished facade allowing a new kind of beauty to shine through. Anna's face, scar and all, had pierced the veneer and revealed something undeniable: authenticity. And in that revelation lay the promise of change yet to come. After the whirlwind of the day's unexpected events, Anna found herself alone in a quiet cafe a few blocks from the agency. The tired hum of the city evening surrounded her, but inside, her mind churned with a mixture of relief, disbelief, and something stirring deeper: hope. A slender cup of lukewarm coffee sat untouched before her, forgotten in the wake of memories she hadn't shared with the agency or its fast-talking inhabitants. The scar that marked her cheek had long been a source of private pain and unspoken story, one hidden under many layers of daily survival. She traced a finger lightly over the scar's delicate ridge as if reconnecting with that chapter of her life again. Years ago, before she had taken the cleaning job, Anna's mornings didn't begin with mops and buckets but with brushes and soft brushes of charcoal and paint. She had been a muse for an artist's studio, a foundation of delicate lines and shifting shadows that captured the human spirit's vulnerability and strength. Modeling was more than a professional dream, it had been a youthful passion, intertwined with art, expression, and freedom. Her voice barely higher than a whisper, Anna reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo tucked between worn pages of a notebook. It was a grainy black and white image taken in her late teens. She was standing confidently in front of a canvas, arm outstretched, eyes alive but thoughtful. No scar marred her smooth cheek in that picture. She took a breath, memories flooding back. The fire that had left the scar was a cruelty of chance, a family accident when she was just 10, a moment that had reshaped her life and the way the world saw her. The accident ended more than just her illusion of untouched beauty, it forced her to grow up swiftly, to shoulder responsibilities, and to tuck aside dreams to care for her younger siblings when her parents struggled. When Anna finished high school, she had hoped to return to the studio world, but life's demands swept her into steady work wherever she could find it. Cleaning jobs became routine, the glamour of modeling was distant and, in truth, seemed reserved for those with faces untouched by hardship. Tonight, she realized the reasons she had kept the scar hidden, the reasons she had resigned herself to laboring quietly while others chased diverse dreams. Yet beneath the surface was the woman who refused to be defined by appearance or judgment, who carried a silent strength that flowering today like sunlight through cracked glass. Across the crowded cafe, the late hour was folding the world into shadows, but for a moment Anna felt like she belonged to more than just survival. Her journey could stretch beyond the unyielding standards she faced, beyond whispers of rejection. She thought of Emma, her closest friend, who had urged her to hold on to self-respect even when everyone else failed to see her worth. Emma's faith had been a tether, a lifeline. But the revelation of who Anna truly was, part artist's muse, part caretaker, all resilience, also added layers to her quiet dignity at the agency. It explained the grace that seemed to unfold when she posed without artifice, the spirit waiting to be recognized beyond the scar. Back in the agency offices, the atmosphere was unsettled. The staff buzzed with renewed energy and whispered speculation. The rigid walls that had housed old-fashioned ideals were cracking ever so slightly. People who had once hidden behind looks now admired Anna's quiet authenticity. Sophia, the assistant manager, had become an unexpected champion. She quietly organized meetings and discussions around inclusion, diversity of backgrounds, and the value of real stories in the images they presented to the world. Lucia's position, meanwhile, had become fragile. She was no longer the undisputed ruler of standards. The client feedback praising Anna's individuality was relentless and demanding, highlighting a new appetite for genuine representation. In quiet moments, Lucia caught herself watching Anna, not with the contempt of before but with a reluctant curiosity. Her own beliefs about perfection and professionalism stirred questions she had never expected to face. One afternoon, Anna and Sophia crossed paths in the hallway. "Hey," Sophia said, voice warm. "You're really shaking things up. There's a lot of talk about you, good talk." Anna smiled softly, a blend of humility and newfound confidence. "I just want people to see what's real." Sophia nodded. "And they're starting to. The world's changing, Anna. Thanks to you, the agency's finally changing too." The words felt like a gentle balm, not just for Anna but for the agency's dusty ideas about beauty and success. In her small apartment later that evening, Anna looked at her reflection in the mirror, tracing the edges of the scar with tender fingers. It was no longer just a mark of survival, it was a symbol of a story told without apology. Her wardrobe remained simple, her manner unassuming. She didn't need sequins or designer gowns to prove herself anymore. Her worth was intrinsic, a fierce light housed in quiet strength. Yet despite the growing acceptance, Anna knew the journey was far from over. Lucia's resistance still lingered like a shadow, and the agency's old habits could be stubborn to change. But Anna was no longer the silent cleaner hidden in corners. She was a visible force, a proof that courage and authenticity could disrupt even the most polished facades. A renewed sense of purpose settled over her as she prepared for the days ahead. If yesterday was the spark, tomorrow held the promise of a flame. And Anna was ready to embrace it. The following weeks sent ripples through the agency with a force no one could have predicted. Clients who once sneered at the slightest imperfection in their models now found themselves drawn to the raw honesty Anna embodied. Campaigns that had stalled in scripts and rigid casting calls suddenly burst alive with fresh energy when Anna's image graced the boards. Sales picked up with renewed enthusiasm, and social media buzzed with praise for the agency's bold new direction. But the transformation wasn't seamless. Lucia, once ironclad as the agency's casting director, found herself increasingly isolated. The client's demands grew louder, the staff more openly supportive of diversity and authenticity, and the pressures on her rose to a crescendo. At first, Lucia tried to maintain her iron grip. She made pointed comments during meetings, subtly undermined Anna's assignments, and upheld meticulous standards that seemed designed to exclude. Yet the momentum was against her. The agency's leadership, after being bombarded with client feedback highlighting Anna's success and the growing public desire for representation beyond perfect facades, insisted on change. One afternoon, Lucia was called into the agency director's office. The room was stark, suffused with muted urgency. "Lucia," the director began, tone steady but firm, "the agency is evolving. Our clients want inclusivity and genuine stories. We need to embrace that." Lucia's jaw tightened, a flicker of frustration flashing across her face. "I've maintained the standards that built this agency," she argued. "We can't lose what made us prestigious." The director shook his head. "Those standards are obsolete. The market is shifting, and if we don't adapt, we risk losing everything. We're thanking you for your work here, but it's time for new leadership aligned with our vision." Lucia's world tilted. The chastening reality sank in as the door closed behind her, sealing her fate. Meanwhile, Anna's path continued its upward arc. The agency officially signed her as one of their new faces, a symbol of the change unfolding within the glamorous yet often unforgiving fashion world. Her campaign shoots became highlights, her image appearing on billboards, in magazines, and across digital platforms. The once dismissive clients now sought her out, drawn to the authentic strength she projected. During a bustling photo shoot for an international campaign, Anna stood before the cameras, her scar illuminated gently under soft studio lights. There was no makeup heavy enough to disguise it nor need to conceal it. It was part of her story, part of her strength, a mark that had once threatened to define her as less now defined her as a woman who refused to be erased. After the shoot, as she gathered her belongings, a young assistant approached, voice hesitant but sincere. "Anna, your courage changed everything here. You showed us all that beauty isn't perfect, it's real." Anna smiled, warmth flooding her features. "I didn't set out to change the industry. I just wanted to be seen." That simple truth resonated deeply, not only for Anna but for everyone who had witnessed her journey. In time, Lucia reached out, first through a terse email and later a request to meet. The tension was palpable when they sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, the space charged with years of unspoken conflict. Lucia's voice was measured, tinged with regret. "Anna, I owe you an apology. I was wrong. Your strength, your presence, it's changed my perspective. I see now that beauty isn't one thing." Anna nodded, the tension between them easing slightly. "Thank you, Lucia. We all grow. Sometimes it takes being challenged." Lucia offered a small, genuine smile before standing to leave. "If there's ever a way I can support you moving forward, I will." Anna watched her go, feeling a quiet forgiveness blossom. The past conflicts no longer weighed her down. The agency, having weathered the transition from old ideals to fresh visions, prospered in ways unimaginable just months earlier. Other agencies began to take note, slowly shifting toward inclusivity and celebrating diverse forms of beauty in their own campaigns. Anna's story spread beyond the fashion world, a reminder to countless people that authenticity and inner strength could outshine the brightest spotlight. One evening, as she relaxed in her modest apartment, Anna reflected on the journey from a simple cleaner to a celebrated model. The scar on her cheek, once a source of pain and exclusion, now shimmered in the soft lamplight, a testimony to survival, courage, and transformation. She reached for her phone, typing a message to her followers and supporters, inviting them to share what they would have done in her shoes. "What would you do if you were Anna?" the post read. "Have you ever been judged unfairly? Tell me your story." Within moments, messages and comments flooded in, stories of struggle, resilience, and the refusal to be defined by others. Anna felt connected to a larger community of voices that valued honesty and strength over superficial perfection. She closed her eyes and smiled, a quiet satisfaction settling in. The journey was far from over, but the path now illuminated was one she could walk confidently. "Thank you for being part of this," she whispered, fingers hovering over the subscribe button on her channel. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories of courage and hope. See you in our next story.